When my stepsister and my fiancé found out that they were secretly listed as heirs to a $10 million family business, he said, "We don't need her anymore," and left me jobless. My own mother laughed. 7 hours later, the entire board resigned. Let's see you lead without a team. When my brother Carter and I were kids, it was pretty clear who was the favorite. He could do no wrong. He could fail classes, crash the car, lie about missing school, and our mother would find some way to justify it. I remember once I got an A- in biology and she told me, "Next time, don't get distracted by social things." I didn't even have a social life. Our mother, Mary Ann, has always been sharp in a very cold, weaponized kind of way. She speaks softly, but her words always have the sting of a slap. My father, Gregory, was the opposite. Quiet, patient, and more comfortable with blueprints than with people. He worked long hours as an engineer and came home tired, but never unkind. He didn't challenge my mother's cruelty, and I think that made it worse. I left home at 18, with barely a dime, and put myself through college working part-time at a small shipping firm. I didn't ask them for help. I already knew what the answer would be. Carter stayed. He started a few ventures here and there, tech stuff, consulting, even a smoothie shop once. All of them crashed within a year. But still, Mom praised him like he was destined to be some misunderstood genius who just needed the right break. Meanwhile, I was climbing the ladder in logistics, managing distribution chains, optimizing systems, building teams from the ground up. Quiet, steady progress. No fanfare. I wasn't bitter. At least not at first. I just thought if I worked hard enough, they'd eventually see me. Eventually, I stopped hoping for that and just focused on building a life I could be proud of. When Dad got sick, it was sudden and sharp, pancreatic cancer. He didn't last long. A few months of slow decline, hospice care, and then, gone. The day he passed, I sat beside his bed in silence for hours, just holding his hand. My mother didn't cry. Carter didn't either. He was already looking up estate planning info before the body had even been picked up. The funeral was on a cold February morning in Portland. The church was small, packed with former colleagues, neighbors, and extended family. I wore a black wool coat and gloves, and I stood beside the casket, welcoming people who came to pay their respects. That's when it happened. I'd left my bag in the family pew, tucked under the bench where I kept my phone and a folder with some documents. I didn't even realize the letter was in there. It had come the day before, official confirmation of my promotion to regional director. The position came with a 6-figure salary, a relocation package, and oversight of our Pacific Northwest operations. I hadn't had the chance to share it with anyone yet. I guess my mother had seen it. She walked over to me with the opened envelope in her hand. She said, "You left this in your things." Before I could thank her, she turned to Carter and extended the letter toward him, saying, "You should have been the one to get a letter like this. But you were never management material." I blinked. My breath caught. Carter gave me an apologetic look, barely glanced at the letter, and handed it back. He didn't say anything. No defense. No redirect. Just that half-hearted, uncomfortable shrug he always used when Mom did something awful but he didn't want to confront it. I didn't react. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice or throw the letter back at her. I simply smiled, just enough for myself, and walked away. The next 2 months moved quickly. I relocated to Seattle for the new role, got settled in a modest apartment with a view of the Sound, and buried myself in the work. I wasn't just managing a division, I was building a culture. Leading people. Taking meetings with clients I used to only read about in memos. It was exhausting and exhilarating. The grand opening of the regional HQ was set for late April. The company was making a huge deal of it. There was press, banners, speeches, even a catered reception. My name was on the invitations, my face on the internal newsletter. I hadn't told my mother. But then, out of nowhere, she sent a message through LinkedIn. Not bad for someone who was never management material. That was all she wrote. I didn't reply. But I sent her an invitation to the opening, out of pure curiosity. I didn't expect her to come. She did. She arrived late, during the CEO's introduction. She stood in the back, dressed in gray, holding a patent leather purse I recognized from years ago. No smile. Just watching. When it was my turn, I walked up to the podium in my navy blue blazer, heels echoing against the floor. I thanked the board, the leadership team, the staff. I spoke about resilience, about systems and structure, about the human element of logistics. Then I paused. I want to thank someone who isn't here with us today, my father, who passed earlier this year. He taught me a lot about patience and quiet strength. Qualities that don't always get recognized, but end up building the strongest foundations. I glanced to the back. She hadn't moved. Her expression was unreadable. Just stone. After the speech, there were photographs, handshakes, endless congratulations. I didn't go looking for her. She left before the champagne was even poured. But that image, her standing there in the back, unable to interrupt or redirect the attention, stayed with me. I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. But maybe those things aren't so different. In the days that followed the speech, I didn't hear from her. No call, no text, no backhanded message through LinkedIn. It was almost eerie, the way silence from her felt louder than anything she could have said. Carter messaged me the next week, though. Just a short text. Mom said you were cold to her at your event. Just thought I'd check in. I stared at my phone for a good 10 minutes. Cold. She stood at the back of a public event, made zero effort to approach me, and left without saying a word, and somehow, I was the one being called cold? I didn't answer right away. I went back to my routine, waking up early, walking the pier near my building before work, pouring myself into meetings and logistics reports and onboarding new managers. But that word stuck with me. Cold. I called Carter later that week, just to clear the air. She said that to you? I asked, my voice flat. Yeah, he said. She said you were distant. That you ignored her. She watched the speech from the back of the room and didn't even say hi. There was a pause on the line. I could hear the faint sound of dishes clinking in the background. Carter always paced while he talked. She's just going through a lot, he said finally. Carter, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She humiliated me. At Dad's funeral. I know, he said quietly. I didn't say it was right. Then why are you still defending her? I'm not, he said, a little too quickly. I'm just saying, she's alone now. She's hurting. You know how she is. Yes. I did. I knew exactly how she was. The thing about people like my mother is they don't ever hit you outright. There's no screaming, no public shaming. Instead, it's slow. Silent. Like a drip of water that hollows a stone. When you try to explain it to others, it sounds petty. Like you're exaggerating. But when you live in it, day after day, you begin to shrink without realizing it. Growing up, I remember getting dressed for school and hearing her say things like, that color doesn't suit your skin, or are you sure you want to wear that? It draws attention to your hips. She never said I was ugly, just gave me enough commentary that I learned to see myself through her eyes. Slightly wrong. Always needing improvement. She didn't yell when I brought home awards. She just said things like, Carter had a higher GPA at that age, or, it's nice, but it's not Harvard. Even as an adult, she found new ways. She once asked me why I was still renting when Carter had a mortgage, never mind that he had help with a down payment and I was working 3 jobs after undergrad. That funeral scene, it wasn't a one-time offense. It was just the loudest one. The most visible. But it had been building for years. A lifetime. About 3 weeks after the event, I got a call from an unknown number. Anya, the voice said. I recognized it immediately. Yes? I didn't want to bother you at work, she said. But I figured I'd reach out. I'm sorting through your father's old things. There are some books you might want. Engineering manuals. Some notebooks. Maybe some pictures. I didn't respond at first. The fact that she was offering something caught me off guard. Okay, I said eventually. You can set them aside. I could mail them, or you could come by. Just for an afternoon. I didn't want to. But I agreed anyway. It had been years since I'd been inside the house on Wild Rose Lane. The furniture was the same, just a little more faded. The air smelled faintly of lavender and lemon wood polish. She kept things obsessively clean. I followed her into the den, where Dad used to read his books on the recliner. She had a box set aside, neatly labeled, of course. I opened the lid and found a stack of hand-bound notebooks, a few Polaroids of him at job sites, and an envelope with old newspaper clippings. He was proud of you, you know, she said, not looking at me. Did he say that? No, she said after a long pause. But I could tell. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But I'd spent too long learning to decode her words. This wasn't about him. It was about her trying to soften the edges of her own image. I'm sorry about the letter, she added, barely above a whisper. What do you mean? I asked, eyes still on the box. At the funeral. That was out of line. I didn't respond. You've done well for yourself, she continued. Even if I don't understand your choices. There it was. The apology, retracted in the same breath it was given. I didn't come here for that, I said quietly. She didn't push. She just stood there, arms crossed. Later, in the kitchen, I saw a pile of unopened bills and some correspondence from Carter. Apparently he'd moved out again. Couldn't keep up with his mortgage after a bad investment. He's struggling, she said, following my eyes. I noticed. He's under a lot of pressure. We all are. The silence after that was thick. She didn't ask for help. But I knew she wanted me to offer it. I didn't. That visit stayed with me. I didn't cry afterward, and I didn't feel angry. Just hollow. Like there was no satisfaction to be found in watching someone who hurt you fall apart. No relief. Just more mess to carry. I spoke to Carter again not long after. He was staying at a friend's place in Tigard. She's not doing well, he said. I figured. She's alone. You know how she gets. I sighed. You keep saying that like it's an excuse. I'm not excusing anything. You are. Every time. She's still our mom. I know, I said. But I'm not her punching bag anymore. He didn't answer. I think, deep down, he knew he wasn't ready to stop being hers. I focused on work. I traveled up to Vancouver, British Columbia for a week to oversee a new supplier contract. I began mentoring 2 junior managers, both of whom reminded me of who I'd been 10 years ago, eager, unsure, hungry to be seen. I didn't talk about my family. Not much, anyway. I didn't want to be that person who drags their baggage into every room. But when one of my ments, Priya, asked me how I became so confident in meetings, I told her the truth. I wasn't always, I said. But after a while, I realized the people I was waiting to validate me never would. So I stopped asking for permission. She nodded, and I could see in her eyes she understood. Probably more than she let on. A couple of weeks passed before I heard from Carter again. This time, it was more direct. Mom's doctor called. She's been missing appointments. Her blood pressure's out of control. I can't do this all myself. I read the message over twice. Then again. My thumb hovered over the reply button. I didn't know how to respond, not because I didn't care, but because I wasn't sure how much I was supposed to care anymore. There's a certain kind of fatigue that creeps in when you're asked to nurture the same person who's spent your entire life diminishing you. It's a numb kind of confusion. Still, out of some mix of guilt and caution, I agreed to call her doctor. After a short, clipped conversation, I learned she had been skipping medications, downplaying symptoms, refusing basic care. Classic Marianne, too proud to ask for help, too stubborn to admit she needed it. I sent Carter a text. She's being reckless. But it's not your job to fix her. And it's not mine either. He replied an hour later. So what do we do? Watch her spiral? I didn't answer. Not because I didn't care. Because I didn't know. The truth was, I'd started seeing a therapist not long after the funeral. Her name was Clara. Warm voice, gentle eyes, and the kind of person who didn't flinch at emotional rot. At our second session, I told her about the letter. About the funeral. About the long, slow war that was my relationship with my mother. She listened quietly, then asked me something simple. How old were you when you first realized she didn't love you the way you needed to be loved? It felt like someone had reached into my chest and pulled something loose. I didn't have an exact age. But I remembered moments. Specific, crystalline memories. Her giving Carter a new bike for his birthday while handing me a pair of hand-me-down rain boots wrapped in old newspaper. Her telling me at 17 that I'd make a decent executive assistant if I didn't let my attitude get in the way. Her not showing up to my college graduation dinner because she was too tired from helping Carter set up a website for a business that folded 2 months later. There were too many. Clara didn't rush me. She just said, grief isn't always about death. Sometimes, it's about mourning the relationship you'll never have. That line clung to me for weeks. Meanwhile, work was intensifying. New expansions were being proposed, San Francisco, Denver, even Salt Lake City. I was being looped into higher-level conversations, asked to sit in on executive board meetings. I was doing everything right, professionally. But something inside me still felt unsettled. One afternoon, I was having lunch with my direct report, a smart, no-nonsense woman named Janelle. We'd grown close in a mentor-colleague sort of way. She had a sharp sense of humor and a radar for bullcrap. You've been off lately, she said over grilled salmon bowls. Not bad, just, like your head's somewhere else. I nodded. It's family stuff. Say no more, she said, raising her fork like a white flag. Mothers? I smiled. You too? She rolled her eyes. My mom called me last week to say I looked too tired in my LinkedIn profile picture. So yeah. We both laughed. But the laugh didn't quite reach all the way inside. By early summer, things escalated. Carter called again. She fell in the backyard. Twisted her ankle. Refused to go to urgent care until I basically dragged her there. I closed my eyes. Is she okay? She's fine. But she's not, herself. Not totally. She's getting meaner. Or maybe just more careless. She's always been mean, Carter. You just didn't notice. Silence on the line. I did notice, he said eventually. I just didn't want to admit it. That hit harder than I expected. For so long, I'd painted him as complicit, her enabler, her favorite, the golden child who let her get away with it. I never stopped to wonder what it cost him to stay in her good graces. To bend himself around her moods just so he wouldn't become me. I don't know what to do, he said. I feel like I'm failing both of you. You're not, I said softly. You're just trying to survive her. He let out a long, shaky breath. So what do we do now? He asked. I didn't have an answer. A week later, I was back in Portland for a supplier meeting and decided to drive by the old house. I didn't stop. I didn't even slow down. I just looked out the window at the peeling shutters, the familiar hedges, the cracked driveway where I once skinned my knees chasing Carter in the rain. I don't know why I did it. Maybe to remind myself that it was real. That I had survived that house. That the woman inside didn't define who I'd become outside of it. That night, back at my hotel, I sat on the balcony with a glass of wine and a folded letter in my lap. The promotion letter. The real one, still crisp, still proudly stamped. I hadn't told anyone, but I'd printed a second copy and kept it tucked in my suitcase, like a shield. It wasn't about the job. Not really. It was about the fact that I got there without her. Despite her. And that, I realized, was what made her so angry. Not that I had succeeded. But that I hadn't needed her to do it. Clara, my therapist, asked me something in our next session that stuck with me. Have you ever considered what it would feel like to walk away completely? No guilt. No explanation. Just freedom? I hadn't. Not really. Not in a way that felt real. She's my mother, I said. There's some line I can't cross. Even if she's crossed every one of yours? I didn't answer. But I thought about it. Every night that week. And I started wondering, what if walking away wasn't cruel? What if it was the kindest thing I could do for myself? I didn't go back for a while after that. Carter and I kept in loose contact, mostly through short calls. His tone had changed. There was less defense in his voice, fewer excuses. It was like he'd finally taken the blinders off and started seeing her the way I always had. Still, he wasn't ready to walk away. Not completely. And that was fine. I wasn't waiting for him anymore. One afternoon in late September, I got an email that would change everything. Our VP of Corporate Communications had decided to retire early. There was a hush-hush initiative to restructure several senior-level roles and bring in more diverse leadership with people who had deep operational knowledge. I didn't apply. I didn't need to. 2 weeks later, I was offered the position, Executive Director of Strategy and Operations. A title that came with a corner office, stock options, and a seat at the quarterly board meeting. I was the only person promoted internally. Everyone else had been brought in from competing firms. And here's where it gets poetic. My new role involved developing leadership training modules, one of which would launch in Portland, a new site being built not far from where I grew up. The company wanted to make a splash, ribbon cutting, press, all the usual optics. And because I was a homegrown success story, they asked if I'd be willing to host the event and deliver a leadership keynote. I said yes, of course. And then I asked, very casually, if the venue allowed for a guest list. It did. I sent her a formal, printed invitation. Not a handwritten note. No personal message. Just the same polished cardstock invite I sent to dozens of executives, city partners, and regional vendors. Her name was typed cleanly on the envelope, Ms. Marianne Morrow. No mom. No mother. Just her name. Like any other guest. I didn't tell Carter. The event was held in a massive industrial chic building with exposed beams, polished concrete, and banners in our company's dark green branding. The press came. The board came. Several business columnists from regional papers showed up to get a glimpse of what one outlet was already calling a new generation of corporate leadership. I wore a gray suit this time. Soft but sharp. My hair pinned up, a silver watch my father once gifted me strapped neatly around my wrist. I felt calm. No nerves. Just ready. People gathered. Cameras flashed. And right there, 15 minutes before the event began, I saw her. She walked in slowly, wearing a muted blue jacket, holding that same patent leather purse. She looked older somehow. Smaller. Like the years had finally started sinking into her bones. No one greeted her. She wasn't part of any group. No one knew who she was. She stood off to the side, eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on me. I gave her a single, polite nod, the kind you'd give to a vaguely familiar acquaintance at a conference. And then I turned back to my team. When the time came, I took the stage. My speech focused on what makes great leadership. Not degrees. Not charisma. But the ability to listen. To adapt. To recognize the value in people others overlook. I said, true leadership doesn't require a title. It requires resilience. And the ability to walk into a room where no one expects you to belong, and decide that you do anyway. I didn't say her name. I didn't reference the past. But as I looked toward the back of the room, I saw her standing alone. No applause for her. No attention. Just the weight of everything she could never take credit for. After the event, she waited until most of the guests had cleared. She approached slowly, like she was walking into an unfamiliar room. "You've done well," she said. I smiled, calm and detached. "Yes. I have." She studied me. Like she was trying to find the girl she once underestimated and couldn't. "I suppose you don't need anything from me now." I didn't flinch. I never did. That landed harder than I thought it would. She didn't argue. She didn't deflect. She just looked tired. "I'm heading back to the hotel," she said eventually. "Do you need anything?" "No," I replied. "But thank you for asking." It was the most honest exchange we'd ever had. I never saw her again after that event. We didn't have a big falling out. No screaming match. No grand cut-off. She simply faded from the edges of my life. I stopped calling. She stopped pretending she expected me to. Carter and I still talk. More now, actually. He moved to Bend, started working for a regional accounting firm, got a rescue dog named Theo. He's softer these days. More thoughtful. I think watching our mother unravel gave him permission to rebuild himself differently. As for me, I stayed in the role for 2 years before being recruited into an international strategy position. I live in Vancouver now, just across the water. My apartment is filled with plants and art and peace. I don't hang the promotion letter on my wall anymore. I don't need to. My revenge wasn't loud. It didn't come with shouting or grand gestures. It came quietly. In the form of a microphone. A spotlight. A crowd of people who saw me, not because I demanded it, but because I earned it. And her? She got a front row seat to the life she never believed I could have. No power over it. No part in it. Just the knowledge that I built it without her, and the certainty that she'd never be invited to stand beside me again.